Hi, everyone. Welcome to this live stream / webinar from Octopus Deploy featuring myself and Michael Levan. We'll get to Michael in just a second. Before we get started, thank you for your time and attention joining us today. You are in the right place. This is called the State of Kubernetes 2024, where Michael and I will be talking about all things Kubernetes. It's your first time joining us. Welcome. If it's not your first time joining us, that's fine. Welcome again. I'd like to get started just by sharing some housekeeping notes, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. So if you haven't heard of Octopus Deploy, you can check us out at octopus.com. There you'll find a site that looks like this. We have this lovely graphic at the front here. We are a continuous deployment tool. So if you're all interested in using a tool or leveraging a tool to help you do your deployments well in a robust manner, you can check us out at octopus.com. We also are CodeFresh, so if you can take a look at codefresh.io, if you're looking at utilizing continuous software delivery, utilizing GitOps, you can check us out at codefresh.io. This is part of a series of webinars, which you can find at our website, which is at octopus.com/webinars. There you'll find a page that looks like this. Today we are hosting Michael, but later on in the coming weeks, we will be doing a wide variety of webinars, which you can check out. If you're at all interested in doing database deployments or seeing Octopus for the first time, for example, these and other types of webinars you can check out at this address. In addition to that, if you're at all curious about how we support Kubernetes, you can check out octopus.com/Kubernetes. You can start a new trial. You can read a little bit about how we support Kubernetes at Octopus and gain some insight and knowledge there, which is great. Wrapping things up a little bit, we've got an event coming up in just a little bit of time, in about approximately 145 days, called Shipped. This is our virtual event. It's a 2-day event, and for the first time, we will be accepting speaker submissions. So feel free to sign up for this. This is at octopus.com/shipped. And if you're so interested in speaking, check us out and submit a speaker session there. We have a Sessionize set up for you. And then lastly, but not leastly, we have our YouTube page. This is at youtube.com/octopusdeploy. There you'll find a bunch of videos, including a recording of this conversation that Michael and I are having right now. So check us out, like and subscribe, all the good things as you do. So there you go. All the housekeeping is out of the way. Anyways, Michael, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this live stream today. Why don't you take a second or two telling the folks who you are?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. Really do appreciate it. My name is Michael Levan, and I do everything and anything in the Kubernetes and platform engineering space. Books, live training, consulting, content, you name it, I'm there.
Fantastic. And Michael, a little bit of your experience with Kubernetes. Obviously, you've done a lot of stuff with this. I'll show folks the website here, but you've been in this space for quite a while.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have done everything from being on Kubernetes release teams. I'm actually on the version 1.31 release team right now as we speak. I've done live trainings all over the world for this, outside of the US, in the US. I've spoken at conferences regarding this stuff, podcasts. I've hosted, I've co-hosted, books, and everything in between. So I've kind of seen it all. Yeah.
It's a slight humble brag. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've seen it all.
There you go. Well, because this is a live event, obviously, we are encouraging you to ask your questions. So feel free, if you've got a question for Michael, let us know in the chat. We are live streaming this to a variety of platforms, so let us know if you have a question, and we'd be happy to accommodate. Michael's going to showcase some demos here during this, but we've got about 60 or so minutes to talk about all kinds of things. Anyways, to get started, Michael, I'd like to ask you, what's your current assessment of the Kubernetes ecosystem and the year to date?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the best answer is I think it's boring, and I think that's a good thing. Now, what do I mean by boring? Hear me out. I believe that we're very much at the, where we were in 2010 with VMware ESXi, right? We are now at the stable phase of the platform. There are still things being updated, of course. There are multiple releases per year, all that good stuff. But in terms of the core project, what pods are, what deployments are, what stateful sets are, we're very much in a stable production ready phase, which is a very good thing. That's where we want to be. So when I say boring, I know it throws people off, but it's less of the, excitement, wow, look at this new Kubernetes thing, and more of the, okay, we're now production ready.
Awesome. And just along those lines, in your mind, what were some of the most significant changes or updates that we saw with Kubernetes in 2024?
Honestly, I would say a lot has to do with third-party tools and add-ons. So things like KubeVirt, Kubeflow, which is a method of running AI and ML workloads on Kubernetes. These, and I call them third-party tools and add-ons. I don't know what everybody else calls them, but the integrations in Kubernetes and what we can ultimately do with Kubernetes is arguably the biggest thing right now. Again, it's not really about the core project. It's more about the stuff that's piling on top of it. And that's very good from a platform engineering perspective. So something that I've been talking about way earlier in the year is Kubernetes is now the underlying platform of choice. If you throw KubeVirt on top of it, if you throw Crossplane on top of it, and a few other goodies like Argo CD, you pretty much have a platform that can do everything from manage your containers to manage your virtual machines to create and manage services outside of Kubernetes. So for example, if you use something like Crossplane, I could literally use a Kubernetes manifest to create an Azure VNet or an AWS S3 bucket. So it's literally the underlying platform to do everything and anything that you want to do today.
It's pretty amazing when you consider the fact that we've just hit the 10-year anniversary or birthday, whatever you call it, around with Kubernetes. The amount of traction that Kubernetes has had in the community is just fantastic to see. Have you? I don't assume, or maybe I might. Have you been surprised by the adoption? You've been in this space for quite a while. Has it surprised you?
I don't think it surprised me just because it was like the next obvious evolution, I think. I think it's the next best thing, or it's the best thing of what we have right now. Does that mean that it's going to always just be Kubernetes? No, there's going to be something that's going to come out, right? That's going to kind of triumph Kubernetes, and Kubernetes will still be there, but it'll be more in the background. Very similar to like, virtualization as a whole right now, where we're seeing less of spinning up things like ESXi and Hyper-V and more talk about spinning up things like Kubernetes. So eventually it'll be, but right now it's the forefront. And I think that was just the next step in technology innovation or something like that.
Yep. So describe your role on the release team. What are some of the things that you're working on? What are some of the things you're responsible for?
Yeah. So this is the one that I'm really excited about. This is the second time I've been on the release team, and I'm pretty much able to go in, see all of the new features that are coming out, see, anything that may be happening from like a bug perspective or a failure perspective within various tests that are running across different teams and across different platforms, whether it's AWS specific or on-prem or core code base. And I get to pretty much go in and help fix it. And so it's pretty much just troubleshooting all the time. And that's actually what I enjoy, because that's the fun of it all to me.
Awesome. There must be a lot of work involved in that, because you have to check so many boxes, etc. I mean, I can only imagine the test matrix you guys have running and the infrastructure you need to spit up everything.
Yeah, 100%. So from what I've gathered, and I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but this is just like what I've read and seen throughout the Slack channels and stuff. This is like one of the hardest release teams because there's constant work. Like for example, I was on the docs team prior, and it's pretty much like you have large chunks of work, but it comes in sections. Whereas with the release CI team, it's like you're always doing something Monday through Sunday.
Yep. Yeah. Just as a reminder to folks, we are doing this live, so feel free to submit your questions to Michael. If you'd like to have Michael talk about something, let us know, and we will answer them in the chat. Also, let us know where you're joining from. If you're so inclined to get noticed there, we've got a lot of folks coming across from the US. I can see here around your parts of Europe, which is great. Nice. Michael, you've got some things that you'd like to showcase and show. We can highlight one bit of that, and then this will give time for folks to highlight their questions. But what did you want to show us to get the conversation started?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with the state of Kubernetes, which is why we're here, are the top kind of 3 to 4 different things that you should really be thinking about, at least moving forward for the foreseeable future that I can see. The first is everything around serverless Kubernetes. So I get this question all the time, which is like, what's the next thing going to be? And I don't know, right? But my assumption is it's going to be around more serverless Kubernetes. So what do I mean by that? I mean, right now we have managed Kubernetes services. So the control plane is abstracted away from us. That includes, the scheduler, the API server, etcd. That's all abstracted away from us. But we still have to utilize and manage worker nodes.
Right.
Serverless Kubernetes abstracts the worker nodes. So literally what it comes down to is you're hitting an API and that's about it. So I believe that's going to be the next evolution, which if it happens that way, it'll be like truly software defined infrastructure. Like that's really what we're going to be thinking about as a whole. A couple of cool platforms around it. Gkey Autopilot is great. AWS EKS with Fargate profiles, and GCP Cloud Run. So I was actually on a panel a few weeks ago in California, and GCP was one of the presenters, and they showcased Cloud Run. And I didn't realize this, but Cloud Run is actually running on Borg. Like literally it's running on Borg. So you get all of the orchestration, you get all of the scheduling capabilities, everything, which is awesome, right? Because it's called serverless, but it's actually not serverless. Well, it is serverless, but when we think about serverless, we're thinking like event-driven workloads. We're thinking things that need triggers to kind of kick off the code and go do the job. But it's literally just containers at scale if you don't want to use Kubernetes, which is really cool. Second thing with, again, like virtualization is obviously still very much a thing. It's running in a lot of data centers and it's not going away anytime soon. But a lot of people are really curious about how can I kind of do virtualization in this new cloud native way, right? And that's where KubeVirt comes into play. KubeVirt is arguably one of my most favorite projects. Literally, you're running VMs on Kubernetes, and I have a little demo prepped and everything. I did some pre-work prior. That way, you didn't have to watch me fumble for 15 minutes. And yeah, so that's a really cool one. Literally running virtual machines as a custom resource on Kubernetes, which is great. The next piece, the third, and then I also wanted to talk a little bit about Copilot, which is cool. And pretty much if you have Kubernetes manifest, it helps you templating. But the third bigger thing is the whole AI and ML piece. I don't want to talk about the buzzy hype stuff, more about actually building models on Kubernetes, right? Because we have the ability now with Kubeflow, which is an absolutely awesome project, to instead of having multiple servers or multiple VMs with lots of expensive GPUs tied to each server, lots and lots of infrastructure. Instead of that, we can actually have pods running our ML workloads. And yes, of course, we still need powerful systems. You still need a powerful GPU, all that stuff. But because it's in a pod, it's decoupled, right? So instead of having to have each bare metal server or each VM, you can make a smaller form factor out of it and still get the amount of performance that you would get elsewhere. So very, very exciting project as well.
Fantastic. Just a quick question here from Joshua. Will this live stream be recorded? Yes. This will be available after the fact. We have another question here. Is it possible to configure multiple spaces and environments for Kubernetes agent? I'm wondering if this is about the Octopus deploy Kubernetes agent, but
yeah, I don't think that's anything specific to Kubernetes. I could be wrong, but perhaps maybe just revise the question because I don't know if that has anything to do with like Kubernetes specifically or not. Or
it's tough when you use the word agent. It can be such a nebulous term. We do have an agent for Kubernetes. We can talk about that, but we'll talk about that actually a little bit later. All right, cool. Did you want to jump into your demos now?
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely.
All right.
Beautiful. All right. So first things first is around. Oops, sorry.
Good. All right. You're good to go.
Perfect. So first thing is around KubeVirt that I want to show because it's arguably one of my most favorite topics right now. So if I pull up here, and I have these directions, if you go to, actually, I should probably pull up my Git repo. I'll do that and I'll send it out in the comments and such so everybody can see. But I have some pretty simple, straightforward to use step-by-step instructions to get KubeVirt up and running in your environment. First, you're going to install KubeVirt, right? I have the script here to do it. You have some prereqs that you have to do, like the CDI, which is to give you the ability to upload ISOs to a Kubernetes volume, which is kind of interesting within itself. And then you have to actually do the upload of the ISO. So I just pulled this up. I actually did this yesterday because it takes a little bit. I apparently have like the worst upload speed in the world because it took almost 11 minutes to upload, 2.5 gigs, give or take. But as you can see, I have this command here and I utilize the image upload subcommand. And then I'm literally like taking an Ubuntu ISO and I'm uploading it to my Kubernetes environment, which is really cool. So if I did something like kubectl get PV, this is kubeflow stuff, but we can see that right here. And then once you have that ISO uploaded, then you can actually deploy and spin up your virtual machine. Now, how would we do that? Well, if we're thinking from a sysadmin perspective, first couple of things we need to think about are, okay, we need an ISO, right? Which we know we already have. We need some configurations for our VM, and it's a VM, so it's persistent data, and we need to store that data somewhere. And that's where this PVC comes into play. So what I can do, for example, is I can specify a storage class. Here, I can specify the size that I want, the access mode, and the name. So actually what we can do here, let's change some stuff on the fly. We'll do kubectl get sc, right? And we can see we have a couple of storage classes here, some that are immediate, some that are await for consumer. I prefer the ones that are immediate. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put that in here. All right. Then I'm going to create this persistent volume claim. Okay. I'm going to do a kubectl get pvc. All right. This is still pending. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Right. So now what we can do is we can actually go and we can create that virtual machine. So if we take a look here, we're utilizing the KubeVirt operator, right? So operators consist of custom resource definitions, which are the extension of the API, of the Kubernetes API, and then controllers. So controllers are your reconciliation loops, confirms that your current state is your desired state. If you've ever heard of Kubernetes self-healing, it is not magic. It's a controller doing reconciliation loops on the back end. And then we specify the object or the resource that we're creating here, which is virtual machine. Some labels here, right? I'm specifying Linux because it's an Ubuntu box, the name, the spec, and this is the most important piece here outside of CPU and such, because of course that's necessary. Boot order. So sometimes, depending on the environment, or rather the operating system that you're deploying, the boot order will change. So notice here how boot order 2 is the ISO, and then boot order 1 is the actual hard drive of where Ubuntu would be installed. The reason why is if you put the ISO as boot order 1, you'll never be able to boot into the actual hard drive. And the ironic part about that is on Windows. So I have a demo here for Windows Server 2022, and it's actually the opposite. So that was just, I learned that while fumbling around in KubeVirt, but depending on the operating system that you're deploying, that's going to be the way that it looks. Right.
Shout out to those folks who are a little bit older, remembering BIOS settings.
Yep.
Now it's all text files.
Yeah, we in the days of being a sysadmin, when we had to make sure that whatever the BIOS was set as, whether it was the hard drive, whether we had to continuously click F10 to get to the right boot order, all fun times.
We should probably take a second here to answer Joshua's question, who's asking, could you please summarize the purpose of KubeVirt? Just for
Absolutely.
10 seconds.
100%. So KubeVirt is the ability to run virtual machines on Kubernetes instead of having to worry about an external virtualized environment. So let's say, for example, you want Kubernetes to be your underlying platform of choice, but you look at your data center and you say, I still have a bunch of virtualized boxes running here. Instead of having those virtualized boxes there, you can put everything in Kubernetes.
Awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, cool. So this was created. Let's go ahead and just make sure. Yep, perfect. GP2 immediate, beautiful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to CD into proper location here, right? kubectl create -f ubuntu.yaml. And this is kind of the interesting part about Kubernetes, or rather running virtualization on Kubernetes. Because of the declarative process of Kubernetes and the way that it works, we get to manage all of our resources as we would a pod, right? So virtual machines, I'm literally creating a virtual machine. I'm literally defining a virtual machine the same way I would a Kubernetes manifest, which is, again, very, very interesting as a whole. All right, so let me just make sure here. Yep, Ubuntu LinHD, beautiful. All right, and let me see. Oh, CRD issue. So this is something that may come up on EKS. And this is something that I was having a struggle with a couple of days ago as well. For some reason on Azure, I don't have the same thing. But for EKS, I do. So let me just check here really quick. Let's see. All right. Yep, KubeVirt, kubectl, get all namespace, KubeVirt. Everything is up and operational except this pod. So for some reason, one of the things that I'm finding on EKS is it's actually something that maybe has to do with the storage classes that aren't 100%, but that's okay. We can just move on, so I'm not fumbling around with this. But point being is that if you want to deploy your virtual machine on Kubernetes, try it on EKS, on GKE. You may not have as many resources to do it on something like Minikube or Kind.
Okay.
But if you try it on AKS and GKey, the storage classes should be good to go. One other thing, if you do decide to try it on EKS, you're going to want to specify a storage class that gives you a volume binding mode of immediate. And the reason why is because if I do kubectl get sc, the default is GP2. That's the one that's deployed with your EKS cluster, but it sits at wait for first consumer. What that means is it's waiting for essentially the persistent volume to be claimed prior, but you're going to want one that's immediate. The problem is that out of the box, you won't see a storage class that's immediate. So you're going to have to create that specific storage class. In Azure, however, if you deploy via AKS, you'll be good to go because they have a bunch of different storage classes available. And there's a couple of different premium ones that are immediate binding.
Just a question that came in here to confirm this KubeVirt, works with all cloud providers. I think the major three ones that you mentioned as well.
The major three, yeah. The only thing is, and this is something that I'm still going through and troubleshooting, is for whatever reason, the one primary KubeVirt pod does not stay up for some reason on EKS. I believe it has to do with the storage classes. I have to dive deeper into that. But for some reason, I've just had this problem on EKS, and that's it. It's very strange.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, but definitely try it. Like if you have an Azure environment or a GCP environment, spin up an AKS or a GKE cluster. The biggest thing to remember is when you're going through the ISO update, you're going to want to choose a PVC name that or a PVC that has the immediate binding versus the wait for first consumer. And you're going to want the same thing for the PVC that's going to be your hard drive for your virtual machine.
Interesting.
Yep. So that's one piece of it. The next piece of it is the Kubeflow specification. And same thing here. I have deployed the KubeVirt environment. So if I cd into AI and ML, Kubeflow, and do kubectl, get ns, we can see KubeVirt here, kubectl, get all namespace, KubeVirt. All right, everything is up and running and operational. Oh no, wait, sorry. I said KubeVirt, not Kubeflow. There we go. Okay, so there are a lot of pieces to Kubeflow, and you may see a couple of things here that you're already familiar with if you're in the world of machine learning. So for example, you have this notebook pod that's running, and this is actually Jupyter Notebooks on the back end. It also uses TensorFlow, which is a way to train models. So Kubeflow has a couple of pieces that are primary to Kubeflow itself, but you'll also see that it's using a lot of exterior tools in one location, things like Jupyter Notebooks and TensorFlow and such. So what we're going to do here, and the installation is pretty straightforward. So first thing is you're going to want to clone down this repo here. You're going to want to cd into the manifest, and you're going to want to check out the latest branch. So this is like a beta dev branch. Anytime you see -branch, and then this is an actual prod level version branch, right? Once you cd in, you're going to run this little while loop here against all the Kubernetes manifests that are running in the customized configuration. And the reason why, from what I've gathered just from running it a few times, is you almost run into like a race condition in a sense, right? Because some of the containers come up that have some prerequisites, but those containers aren't up yet. So you just pretty much have this while loop that's running until all the applications inside of the container, inside of the pod, are up and running and everything can communicate. Because there's some big dependencies on like MySQL and stuff.
Yeah, also, I think the configuration probably wouldn't take. I can see that line being used in a lot of places.
Right.
While customized build, kubectl apply. No, I said apply. Force it.
Exactly. 100%. So next, what we're going to do now, one of the things that Kubeflow is dependent on is Istio. So Istio is running in the back end. If you're not familiar with Istio, it's a service mesh. So it helps you with a couple of different things. It helps you troubleshoot network latency, and it also helps you implement MTLS, which in the case of Kubernetes would be service-to-service encryption. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run this. All right, and boom, this is up. I'm actually going to have to share another screen here.
That's fine.
Let me go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'm going to share. Yeah. All right, cool. So this is what Kubeflow looks like as a whole once it's up. So again, you have everything from your notebooks to volumes for any persistent data, your experiments, and actually let me take a second to go through the primary pieces here. All right. So first you have your notebooks. And when you create a notebook, notice here you had a couple of different options. Now in the world of machine learning, you're going to see a lot of Jupyter utilized, but you can also use RStudio. R is a big programming languages for statistical computing. And then you also have the VS Code implementation here. You would specify the resources that are needed to run your notebook. And then once you have your notebook up and running, you can then begin to build your models. Now that's one piece of it. And this is just to kind of get you started. If you want to kick things off, these are a couple of things you're going to need. That's number one. Number two are experiments. So experiments are, kind of think about them. And this is my terminology because I'm like pulling this from just platform engineering and systems engineering and stuff terminology, think of experiments kind of like a repo or a directory in a sense. Like that's where your model is kind of sitting to wait for runs to occur. Your runs are literally, as it sounds, you're running your models over and over again just to train them in different ways. You can have multiple runs pointing to the same experiment because that experiment is just where your model is sitting. And then pipelines, it's just to automate the process. So literally think of it like CI/CD pipelines in a sense. Again, I'm comparing it to like systems engineering terminology. If there's anybody that's doing AI and ML on here, you might get mad at me. Apologies. I'm just doing the comparison here for everybody to more or less understand, because I'm sure we have a lot of DevOps folks on here and such.
Yep.
So those are the two primary things, but actually one more thing I'll show here. Let me reshare my screen. All right, that's coming up, right? Can you see my screen?
I can. We're going to get the Hall of Mirrors here. All right,
there we go. Beautiful. So if you go to Gkey, and this is the serverless Kubernetes piece that we were kind of diving into a little bit before. So if you go to clusters and I go to create, you have two options here. One is the standard, one is autopilot. Now, autopilot is, again, that serverless Kubernetes piece. It allows you to scale without having to worry about implementing resource optimization yourself. You literally just have to worry about what you're deploying. Now, what I will say is there are a couple of things that are stopping us from really utilizing serverless Kubernetes in production. The first is the lack of control for things like optimization and performance. So I'll give you an example. So Kubeflow, it requires a lot of heavy resources because it requires a lot of memory, a lot of CPU, a lot of GPU to be able to train your models.
Yeah.
So you need a significantly large cluster. So I think, like, for example, what I was just showing on Kubeflow on EKS, I think my nodes were like T3 double XLs. So okay. you need some fairly large nodes. Because of that, the scaling doesn't happen as quick as you would hope, which means Kubeflow actually couldn't get up and running fully in the time that it needed in that 20 seconds. Like if you remember that while loop where it sat for 20 seconds, I'd actually need to increase that to like about 60, because in the background, the nodes are coming up, but it's not as quick. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is with serverless Kubernetes, you're really tied into the cloud provider. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is on EKS, for example, let's say you're using Fargate profiles, you can't use external service meshes. So if you're already using Istio, you wouldn't be able to use Istio on EKS with Fargate profiles. You'd have to use AWS's version of service mesh. Now on Gkey Autopilot, you actually can use Istio. So it's going to depend on like those third-party tools and add-ons. You're going to have to see if whatever serverless Kubernetes offering you want to use supports the tools that you need, because not all of them will. So those are the two big gotchas right now that I would tell everybody to kind of keep an eye out for. And the last one, and this is really cool. I don't know. I think this is like arguably one of the coolest serverless platforms right now. It's Cloud Run. I don't know if it's just because I kind of geek out on the fact that like it's running on Borg, which is really, really cool. But if you want to just get containers out there and scale them in a sophisticated fashion without having to worry about Kubernetes, Cloud Run is the place. So you have two different options here, essentially. You have jobs, which are like, kind of think about them like cron jobs, or think about them like containers that come up, do a job, and go away. And then you have services, which are long lasting. Now you have a couple options. You can just point to code, or you can point to a container image. You have some, example ones here, I believe, maybe. Yeah, demo containers. You got one here you can choose. But what I really want to show are the features that you have. So just because it's not Kubernetes does not mean that you don't have, I guess we can call it Kubernetes-like features. So for example, we have the ability to implement RBAC and authentication, which is nice. We have the ability to ensure resource optimization and cost optimization, right? So if you're doing anything FinOpsy related, you can do that in here. You can specify your auto scaling from a horizontal pod auto scaling perspective, or it's not called horizontal pod auto scaling here, but you can kind of think about it like that. You have the scale to 0 if you'd like. You also can specify, minimum of 5 containers running, right? You have your ingress configurations here. And then you have any type of spec configuration. So if you're thinking about your Kubernetes manifest, under the pod piece, you have your spec, and you can specify things like the name of the container, the port, resources, right? So if you're thinking about like limits, requests, quotas in your Kubernetes manifest, and then you can also specify variables and secrets, mounts, and then you have some volumes up here. You can add volumes for any persistent data, networking approaches. Like for example, we can do some encryption here, and then security. So I don't know. I really like the idea of this because it allows people to not have to jump headfirst into Kubernetes to orchestrate containers, which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. I'm just going to remind folks, thank you, by the way, for those demos. That's awesome. So just to remind folks, this is a live stream. This is a live webinar. So feel free to ask any questions if you have them. Feel free to take advantage of the chat window. Wherever you're joining us from, we are live streaming across a variety of platforms. So feel free to let us know. We do have some questions that came in. I didn't want to interrupt your flow there. That's a big no-no when doing demos. So Laurent asks, can you make it work with Argo CD so you get all the advantages of GitOps as well? I think he was referring to, I think Laurent was in reference to KubeVirt. Yep. So when you were doing your demo around KubeVirt, can we make it work with Argo CD?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so we can make it work with Argo CD because remember, what is Argo CD doing? It's looking at a repository and it's saying, okay, here's a Kubernetes manifest. I need to confirm that my current state is my desired state. My current state is what's running in my Kubernetes cluster. My desired state is whatever's in the repo. So because we're creating a virtual machine Kubernetes manifest, it 100% can work with GitOps. It can also work with something like Crossplane, which is the ability to create services with Kubernetes outside of Kubernetes. So I'll actually pull up here. I have it in another repo. And also, John, I'm not sure if, so I think there are comments coming in on my LinkedIn. Because I see I didn't know if you could see them or not. Because I see like the little, so I see the little link thing here, which is indicating that it's on mine. So I can go ahead and answer those as well. But really quick, I just want to open up Crossplane here. Let me share my screen.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So for example, something like Crossplane, which again, this really helps us make Kubernetes the true underlying platform of choice. So if I open up Crossplane here, and let's say I go to the setup, right? Pretty straightforward.
Sorry, I hate to do this, but for folks who have never heard of or seen Crossplane before.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Crossplane is simply a way to create services with Kubernetes outside of Kubernetes. That's it, plain and simple. So if I can use Kubernetes to create an AWS S3 bucket, I can use Kubernetes to create an Azure virtual network, for example. So this is the installation piece. And then let me just actually pull up one of the configurations. So you bring down the provider, very much the same as like, let's say you're bringing down a Terraform provider or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Specify some authentication pieces here because Crossplane will need authentication to whatever platform. And then you provide your provider config. The provider config just pretty much ties the secret to the provider. And then Just like that, you can literally have a Kubernetes manifest that creates an Azure virtual network. And again, this is the I don't want to sound like a broken record at this point, but this is really what like making Kubernetes the underlying platform of choice looks like. Because at this point, I can create services outside of Kubernetes with Kubernetes. I can create virtual machines and run them. I can even, if everybody's familiar with Cluster API, if not, Cluster API is the ability to create Kubernetes clusters with Kubernetes manifest. So you literally just get rid of Terraform at that point if you want to. But if your whole world revolves around Kubernetes, at this stage, you can use it for everything. And like we were talking about in the beginning of the live stream, where Kubernetes is at this point where like the core project is boring, right? It's stable. But but all of these different tools and features that we see here to put on top of Kubernetes, this is the gold. Like this is the gold right here. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you want to take a second and answer any of the questions that are coming up on your LinkedIn, if they're already posed there? So I'll just tap dance here while you take a look at the questions. So for those who are joining us late, just to let folks know, we have a number of resources available off of our website. So you can check us out at octopus.com. We also have a product called CodeFresh, which you can check out at codefresh.io. Michael, this is just for your benefit. I'm tap dancing while you're looking at questions. If you're at all interested in signing up for some webinars, you go to octopus.com/webinars. You can read more about what we provide around Kubernetes, which is at octopus.com/Kubernetes. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Is that enough tap dancing for you, Michael?
We are awesome. Good. Yep, I was able to look at all of them. Yeah, because there was actually a lot that came in, and I was like, oh, okay, because it shows the little key thing, which indicates it's like coming from my. Yeah, it's weird. So okay, somebody said thank you for doing this. How can Python help us with DevOps? I only use Bash for most of the things. I think it's a fully loaded question because depending on what you want to do. I mean, Python is a pretty like overall language that allows you to do a little bit of everything, whether you just want to do automation, whether you want to do machine learning, whether you want to build front end stuff, back end stuff. You have the ability to do a little bit of everything. So I would say, I mean, in terms of how it can help with DevOps, it all comes down to like what you're trying to build. You can automate and script a lot of stuff with Python, but like you can also do the same thing with JavaScript, and you can also do the same thing with Go. There's all these different libraries and third-party modules that you can import, and that kind of opens up your realm to be able to kind of do whatever you want. But it really all depends on like what you ultimately want to do. So like, for example, if you're thinking more in the Kubernetes realm, operators, controllers, creating Kubernetes native features, that's pretty much all done in Go, right? So you're not going to see a lot of Python, just as an example.
Yeah, I think a lot of people coming to the Kubernetes space see a lot of Go everywhere, basically, and they assume, oh, I have to use that as well. That's not necessarily the case.
Exactly. Yeah. And then could you please summarize the purpose of Kuber? We already talked about that. Slight tangent from Michael. What advice could you share on preparing for the CKA exam? So I would say you want to have a minimum of 6 to 12 months working with Kubernetes, because the exam is very much hands-on. So like, it's not multiple choice. It's not A, B, C, or D. Like, you are actually in an environment. It's proctored, of course, right? They're recording, but you are in an environment building, deploying, and fixing things. So you want to make sure that you have as much hands-on training as possible. Yeah.
There you go.
There's actually, if I may.
Yeah, go for it. I'm just going to mention briefly, we actually have certifications for GitOps as well, which you can check out at learning.codefresh.io as well, just for folks to know.
Beautiful. And then I'm going to share this out in the comments. Good friend of mine, Ben, he wrote an incredibly great CKA book Definitely check that out. I love the book personally.
Worst URL ever. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to shorten that one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is not an IP address. I believe that's a unique ID of some sort.
I know. I've seen worse. Believe me, I've seen worse. So the title of this is
This is, what is it? I think it's just certified Kubernetes administrator.
okay.
Yeah, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. Yeah. Oh, certified Kubernetes administrator study guide.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's bring this up. Here we go. It's available from O'Reilly. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. It's got a picture of an owl on the front, I assume.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, just to showcase or show folks what this looks like. Here we go. Here it is up on Amazon.
Yep. Perfect.
Always important to have the O'Reilly animal well
Yes.
represented.
That is the that's the not slogan, but the whatever you want to call that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Just giving folks time. We've got a few minutes left. Just want to give some folks time to ask any questions that they may have. Again, thank you for the demos. That's awesome. Really keen to check out things like Kubert and others as well. Just moving forward a little bit on, I have a boatload of questions. This is just basically to see the conversation. So based on I have one question here, which is based on your experience, what has been the most surprising development in Kubernetes recently? You referred to it as boring, obviously around, but is there anything that's surprised you around Kubernetes? I mean, we've seen a little bit of innovation going on around the API. What else? I'm thinking out loud here. Yeah, you're right. It's just a steady cadence. Anything that surprised you?
I think if we take a look at, I don't even know if this is the answer, but if we take a look at where Kubernetes kind of came from to now, it's very surprising to me to see it go from, a bunch of bash scripts that were just moving around containers to like, I can run virtual machines on Kubernetes. Like some may even say like, hey, Kubernetes has gotten too complex and it's completely out of scope at this point. I disagree because I think actually, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have felt the same way. But now that I'm thinking about it more of like, this is an underlying platform that can literally run everything that I want. It's actually pretty neat. I don't believe we've really had something like that in the past. The closest thing is, virtual machines, right? But the ability to utilize these totally like small, almost micro decoupled pods and just scale them out in a way that, again, we've seen scaling before, but like with the quickness that we see it now and how almost out of the box easy it is versus like if we go to the VM days of, hey, are the VMs in the data center in a hot or a hot cold HA style environment where if this thing goes down, is that VM going to come up or should it already be running just in case because it's going to take forever for it to come up? But now it's like pod goes down, boom, new one comes up like that. And we haven't really seen this level of velocity ever.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because in your demo you highlighted the fact that with different cloud providers you're going to get, and I'm speaking more about your demo around Kubert, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, you're going to get different providers doing it in different ways and supporting it in different sort of notions. So I guess that's the ecosystem. Now it's getting even, for me, it's getting more complicated now because the ecosystem you have to understand in addition to the base platform and how the cloud providers, the major three, differ in terms of their support. I will ask this, and I know that you love. It's like asking who's your favorite child, but is there a platform that you like the most? Are you using? You find yourself gravitating more to than any of the big three?
Yeah, honestly, I probably not the answer everybody's expecting, but GCP. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the available add-ons and options for GKE, it's like out of this world. And then if you utilize things like Cloud Run, and in some instances you utilize autopilot, in other instances you utilize standard clusters, it's phenomenal. If you want something that's really, really just straightforward and doesn't require a lot of configuration to just begin, AKS. Like AKS has always been the easiest. EKS, I don't know. Everything with AWS is harder for me for some reason. I just do my best to power through.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the dash F option of life, I guess.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Yeah. But I would
Awesome.
definitely say G key. I mean, even I don't have a G key cluster running, but I can even just showcase like without it running. Let me go ahead and share this here really quick. All right. So if I go, so number one, right, like right off the bat in the overview pane, we have a ton of information. Everything from policy enforcement to any type of security concern, configs, right, efficiency in terms of resource optimization. But then we just have so many different pieces to the puzzle here. Two of my absolute favorites, the security pane. Once this loads, it should load. Yeah. So if I just zoom out here a bit, and I don't have a cluster running, which is why this looks so bare.
Yeah.
Even with it,
imagine it's there. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we literally have, it's pulling in all the vulnerability databases. That's right nice. Here. Like we don't have to do anything else. Any type of threat detection. We have compliance pieces here that are even cooler, right? If we're out of compliance for any purpose, this is great for management, right? Like if you need to export some type of report for an audit that you have going on. And then there is also, where is it? I always forget, but there is a piece in here that allows you to, so the attached cluster thing is cool. AKS, EKS, wherever. If I go into clusters, create, notice here how I have other clouds. So I can configure authentication to AWS and Azure and configure my clusters here. I can also do stuff on-prem. And then there's another piece here. Again, I always forget where it is, but you can migrate virtual machines to containers from GCP. And and that is just like the, I don't know, I feel like you don't see a lot of those features in one place for Kubernetes in any of the other cloud providers.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that was I didn't realize that was a capability.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, I think they're the only one that's doing the VM to container thing.
So to give folks a little bit of time here to ask any questions, because we have a few minutes left, just going to remind folks of some of the resources that we have available. You can check us out at octopus.com. Check us also out at codefresh.io. If you're curious at all about what we do around Kubernetes, you can check out our use case page, which is at octopus.com/Kubernetes. Make this your bookmark, if not a homepage. We'd love for you to do so. Sorry. So that's worth checking out. We also have a event coming up. It's a virtual event called Shipped. This is in November. We're going to have a lot of content from speakers talking about Kubernetes, etc. Yes, to answer the question, this is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube page, which you can find at youtube.com/octopusdeploy. There you'll find a whole bunch of webinars and videos, etc., etc. I don't know, Michael, have I done enough tap dancing here to get some questions coming in?
Let's
check
see.
the comments here. Oh, no new questions. There you go.
Actually,
this one we can quickly answer this one. So, hello, I'm 1.5 years experienced DevOps engineer. Can you please tell me how MLOps by myself and get a job in MLOps? I think this is, well, I'll let you start, but there's lots of ways in which you can get involved.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so you're never gonna really hear this from me because I'm not like a huge proponent of like everybody needs to go to college. So I know a lot of really great people in this space that never went to school and they're incredibly smart. But I think in the data engineering space, it may be a good start. Like that's at least what I'm seeing because I think that the landscape is everybody's trying to do it right now. Right? Like everybody's trying to get on this ML and AI thing. I even know people, like family members and stuff that have no interest in tech and they're like, should I go back to school for data engineering? Right? Like this is like it's a thing where everybody's like,
Yeah.
wow. So I think that, it could never hurt, right? Like if you're already in college, or if you maybe have a bachelor's and you need to take a class or two to like do something in data engineering, that would be really solid. Other than that, dive into Python as much as possible. Python is still like the de facto language
Yep.
for machine learning.
Hmm.
And luckily, there's a lot of stuff out there that's readily available. That's the best advice that I have. I'll be completely honest in saying that I'm probably not the best person to ask on how to get an ML ops job. I can tell you what technology you should know, but I've never gone through the process of like getting an actual job in machine learning.
You took all my talking points. I was going to say along the same lines. It's that scene scene at the end of Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams' character said, he stole my line. Anyways. All right. Well, just to wrap things up here, first and foremost, thank you, Michael, for your awesome demos and answering the questions. We really appreciate it. Make sure you guys follow Michael. It's at michaellevan.net. There you'll find a whole bunch of resources. You can connect with him on LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. So make sure to do that. Michael, where are you off to next? Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap things up here?
One thing actually, we started on a project recently, working with my friend Kat Morgan on this. Really, really awesome engineer. She's phenomenal. There is something called Container Craft. This is a big project, big community that she's built. I'm lucky enough to begin working with her on it. And there's something called Cargo, which I will plug in the comments, which is, pretty much the gist is to get a fully blown platform engineering environment up and running without you having to do and jump through a million hoops. That's a pretty cool one. If you like podcasts, Engineering Revised podcast, one that I started with my good friend Christina very recently. And other than that, just keep going on LinkedIn in terms of following, what I'm posting out. I put out 2 posts per day. It's all educational based content. That's the best place to go if you want to learn about everything Kubernetes and platform engineering.
Fantastic. I've posted the link there to
Thank you.
the repo. So great stuff.
Perfect.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of our time. We've got lots and lots of people who are attending. If you happen to catch this a little bit late, don't worry. We're going to post it up on our YouTube channel. But in the meantime, make sure you go follow Michael over at michaellevan.net. Michael, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, all the viewers and listeners watching this, for your time and attention. We will see you on the next one. Until next time, happy deployments. Take care, everyone.